Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering a build that I'm calling the Alchemical Grenadier. This build is going to focus on blowing up the entire battlefield and absolutely obliterating your enemies using bombs, potions, poisons, and grenades to absolutely rain a barrage of destruction down upon your foes. If you've been following my channel, you know that I recently spent some time rating all of these items in tier lists. We spent a couple weeks going over every consumable item in the game and rating them, and so I wanted to make a build to go along with that tier list. Now that you know which bombs and grenades are good, let's make a build that can use them as effectively as possible so that we can absolutely blow up the entire world. Because this build is going to be following closely to that theme, rather than following the sort of normal honor mode meta, I will say that if you're relatively new to honor mode, or looking for the easiest run, I wouldn't recommend this build. This build is for people looking for an interesting playstyle that is something that's out of the norm. It will still be absolutely playable and winnable on honor mode, especially if you're a little more experienced, but we're going to be focusing on the theme more than on following the normal honor mode meta, so it will require a little more familiarity with the game, because you're going to have to be collecting and hurling all of those explosives, and if nothing else, you can accidentally blow up your party if you're not careful. So, let's get into the build. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Alexandru Tudor for the £10, Josh Hobbs for the $10 donation and all of your support, and Xteen for the $10 donation, as well as Simon C. and Kenneth Shockley for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really do appreciate the support. It really does mean a lot. We're using the Halfling Companion as the example character here, because Halfling's ability to reroll ones on skill checks is incredibly helpful for this character. We're going to be making a lot of potions, and the best way to do that is with Transmutation Wizard's level 2 feature that lets you make double the potions if you pass a medicine check. Halfling is much better at passing these medicine checks because combined with the bonuses that we're going to get to our medicine, one of the few ways that we will be able to fail these is if we roll natural ones. This can significantly reduce our chances of failing the medicine check and increase the number of double potion crafts we get significantly. It also is very helpful because we want ingredients for those potions, and the best way to get those is to steal them. Rerolling natural ones on sleight of hand checks can make it much easier for us to steal ingredients, as well as actual grenades and bombs and oils and elixirs and so on from merchants. Anything that you can't craft, we can also steal from merchants. So that can make sure that we've got our stockpile. Since we are constantly throwing these bombs and grenades at enemies, and potions and elixirs and so on at allies, we need a tremendous amount of them. So the ability to keep ourselves supplied is a critical component of this character. Halfling will help you do that. For our starting class, it's actually somewhat complicated. We need to have medicine proficiency, and ideally we want to get that before we take a rogue level, which is we are going to take later on, so that we can take medicine expertise. If you were able to start with rogue, that would be helpful, but we can't do that because rogues don't get the opportunity to take medicine at level 1, and so they cannot use their rogue expertise to gain medicine expertise. So we need to have proficiency in medicine before we take our rogue level. There are 5 classes that get medicine proficiency, but only one of them is one that we're actually going to take when leveling up this character, so we're going to start as a wizard for that reason. There is one way around this, and that is if you are playing this character as a Dark Urge. Dark Urge starts with the Haunted One background, which gets medicine proficiency, so the Dark Urge version of this character could take their rogue level at level 1 and get better skill access, which is pretty nice, but for most characters building this build, you're going to want to start with Wizard so that you can get medicine proficiency. For our attribute selection, we're going to actually take a very unusual attribute spread for a wizard, and the reason for this is that this character doesn't really care about its stats almost at all. You don't need to hit your attacks because all of your offensive abilities are AoE, and you just need to land them near the enemy for them to be effective, so you rarely need to actually target an enemy's armor class. And you don't care about your saving throws because almost all of the bombs in the game have fixed save DCs, so we don't need to increase our character's saving throws at all. We can therefore ditch our primary stats completely and focus only on 2 things. The only thing this character cares about is winning initiative, so we're going to to put as many points into dexterity as possible, and passing our wisdom checks in order to maximize our potions, because we need to be able to pass medicine checks to gain double potions. Of course, we want constitution so we don't die, but that lets us get away with the very greedy attribute spread of 17 dexterity, 16 constitution, and 15 wisdom. By the time we're actually regularly making medicine checks, we'll be able to boost this to 16, though you could start with 15 con and 16 wisdom if you find that you are doing alchemy earlier. For the most part, I think that this will be a slightly smoother run, but either can work. For our skill selection, of course, we need to take medicine proficiency. That's the whole reason we started with wizard. And then for our other skill, it doesn't matter in particular, but since we've got high wisdom, maybe you want to boost insight or something like that. This character will not be your party face, ideally, so you don't need to worry about any of the dialogue skills. Medicine is the only thing that we really care about from here. For our cantrip selection, we have to make sure that we get Firebolt, because one thing that we're going to be able to create very easily is flammable surfaces, and this will let us set them off, as well as set off barrels or satchels that we can place around the battlefield with a very easy way to do so. And Ray of Frost, because we also are able to very easily create pools of water, and being able to freeze those is incredibly valuable. For our third cantrip, we're going to take Mage Hand, because we want to be throwing grenades, and Mage Hand, if you drop a stack of grenades and then cast Mage Hand, it can double up on throwing stuff for you and help out with your party. It can throw potions at your allies or grenades at your enemies. Be warned that if you drop a stack of grenades for your Mage Hand, though, enemies can target it and blow you up, so usually it's better to use healing potions so your Mage Hand can be throwing stuff at your allies and keeping them alive. But both can work. Mage Hand is very powerful and sort of doubles up on the thing this character is already doing. For our spell selection here, I'm going to recommend taking Longstrider and Enhanced Leap. These are ritual spells that are very helpful. Shield, very helpful in combat. Shield as a defensive option, because this character will need some defenses. And Magic Missile, just so you have a guaranteed way of doing something when you don't have a good bomb to throw, but most of the time this will actually be less important than it is for most other characters. The other important spell that you need is Disguise Self, because one of the few ways to boost our medicine checks will involve having access to Disguise Self, so we want to make sure that we have selected that when we're leveling up. That's it for level 1. Let's move on to level 2. At character level 2, we need to immediately deviate from Wizard, because we don't need to be a Transmutation Wizard yet. We don't need the level 2 feature yet, because we're not likely to be crafting that many potions at level 2 anyways. And we need to be able to actually fight. Being a wizard with 8 intelligence is not what I would call long-term sustainable, so we need to make sure that we can actually attack enemies. Especially in the early game, we won't yet have enough grenades to entirely replace making actual weapon attacks, and so we need to make sure that we can do that somewhat effectively. To do that, we're going to immediately leave Wizard and take a level of Barbarian. This gets us proficiency with all martial weapons, which is very helpful, as well as unarmored defense, which is very good for keeping us alive. In the early game, we will be making weapon attacks, and then in the late game, the best weapon set for us to use is going to be a pair of hand crossbows, because the ability to fire the special arrows can be extremely helpful for setting off bombs, traps, grenades, and poisons, and so on. A flaming arrow in the right place to set off an explosive barrel is a very useful tool for this character, and the hand crossbows allow us to do that multiple times, so it can be extremely helpful, as well because we will be making multiple bonus action attacks. If you ever need to actually just shoot at an enemy, hand crossbows are going to be the best way to go. So we need martial weapon proficiency so that we can actually use those. This lets us fight in the early game while we're busy collecting grenades and ingredients for grenades. Next, we want to make certain that we actually have our At character level 3, we're going to continue to level Barbarian. We want to get to Berserker Barbarian so that we can use a bonus action throw as quickly as possible, and we also want to get to extra attack as quickly as possible. The ability to throw 3 grenades in a single turn, which we'll get at Barbarian level 5, will unlock a whole ton of additional options. Not only is the damage output of just throwing 3 grenades pretty significant on its own, it also lets you much more easily combo together synergistic effects within a single turn to really shut down encounters by blowing up a whole bunch of enemies all at once. So we're just going to continue to level Barbarian. No decisions to make it Barbarian level 2, so let's go to Barbarian level 3. And then of course we're going to be taking Berserker Barbarian, because Berserker Barbarian gets Enraged Throw. While raging, we can make a throw with a bonus action, which is incredibly potent for this character. We deal additional damage equal to our strength, which currently is 8, so we won't be dealing additional damage, but it is, and we probably won't be hitting enemies that often with the attacks, but of course we can, just like any other throwing character, use a strength elixir, which will be very good at generating, in order to gain the benefits of Enraged Throw and actually hit enemies with these attacks and prone them using Enraged Throw as well. The strength elixir isn't mandatory for this build, but just like any other throwing build, is going to power it up significantly, knocking over enemies by hurling a barrel of water at them, followed by blasting them with a bunch of grenades, is very funny, as well as setting up explosives by throwing a satchel charge at an enemy and then throwing, knocking them over in it, and then throwing an alchemist fire at them to light up the whole thing. So all of those are great options that you get from having Berserker Barbarian, and of course that's the pick for this character. At Barbarian level 4, we get access to our first feat, and we're just going to take an ability improvement to boost our dexterity and wisdom. While of course you could take Tavern Brawler with this character, and one of the nice things about this character is you can take Tavern Brawler and have it not be broken. Since unless you're regularly drinking strength elixirs, you most likely won't actually be hitting enemies with your thrown weapons. I think it's more important that we make our skill checks more regularly by taking dexterity and wisdom, and win initiative more regularly so we can blow up enemies before they actually get to go. Other options for this character include things like Mobile, which is actually not terrible for this character at all, because it makes you a little bit faster, and movement speed will be relevant to us. As a halfling, we've reduced our movement speed, so increasing that with mobile can be pretty good as well. So if you took a less greedy attribute split, you could grab that instead. Other than that, no choices at Barbarian level 4, so let's move on to level 5. And at Barbarian level 5, we get fast movement, which of course makes us even faster, and extra attack, which lets us throw a 3rd grenade in a round. 2 in the first round, because of course we have to spend our bonus action entering rage on the first turn of combat, but then we get to throw another grenade with in subsequent rounds with our bonus action throw from Enraged Throw. Having maximized our ability to throw grenades as much as possible at this stage, let's make sure we actually have grenades to throw and potions to drink by maximizing our ability to acquire and produce them. To do this, when we level up, we're going to deviate to a 3rd class, and that class, of course, is going to be Rogue. Rogue gets us access to expertise in 2 skills, and the 2 skills that we're going to take expertise in are, of course, Sleight of Hand, to steal ingredients, grenades, elixirs, and poisons to use on our enemies, and Medicine. This is the whole reason that we took Wizard at level 1, was so we could take expertise in Medicine with our first Rogue level. At this stage, this gives us a +9 to our medicine checks, which will improve to a +11, and that means we are extremely unlikely to fail the DC 15 skill check to craft a potion, especially in combination with guidance from an ally and other ways to boost our skill checks. We can make this almost 100% reliable to get double potions as soon as we unlock that ability, which of course we're going to do at this next level. At character level 8, therefore, we go back to Wizard, and we're going to take Transmutation Wizard, gaining access to the Experimental Alchemy feature. The ability here gives us a DC 15 medicine check to double craft potions, and so all of the ingredients that we've been stockpiling the entire game, we can now turn into millions of potions, poisons, and grenades by brewing them twice as efficiently because we have expertise in medicine. Since our since our medicine bonus is so high, we're just so unlikely to fail these checks, especially if we boost them in any other way, that it really improves our character drastically. We will, of course, want to make sure that we have useful spells prepared. By this point in the game, you've probably gotten the Warped Headband of Intellect, which will let you prepare multiple of these spells, so you can have Disguise Self and Shield and Longstrider all prepared, for example, which is what you're most likely going to be using. I would suggest taking Shield, and then the 3 ritual spells for your spells prepared. You'll get Actually, you'll get 5 at this level, so you can pick up Magic Missile as well. Since we have Unarmored Defense from Barbarian, we no longer need Mage Armor at all. For our new spells known here, you're just going to pick up ritual spells that you might find useful at this stage, or utility spells that you might find useful. Obviously, we're not making attacks with our wizard spells, so just grab stuff like Fog Cloud and Featherfall, anything that you think you might swap into for certain scenarios. Then, at the next level, we're going to go back to our rogue levels, which get us bonus action dashes, hides, and disengages. Bonus action dash on this character is actually extremely helpful, because it lets you dash with a bonus action up next to an enemy and drop one of the explosive barrels that has more efficiency when you drop it and then trigger it with fire than when you throw it, and then still have the movement speed to get away. So having these rogue levels lets us run up to enemies, drop a pile of explosives, run away, and then set them off from a safe distance, all in the same turn, especially combined with the bonus movement speed that we've gotten from Barbarian and from having Longstrider on our Wizard. We're actually very good at that, but we will get even better at that, and of course at everything else, when we take our next rogue level. And at rogue level 3, we get to take Thief Rogue. This gets us up to 3 dashes in a turn, so we can very easily get into position to drop barrels and then explode them, but also lets us throw 4 grenades in a turn by default, because we have 2 bonus action throws and 2 main hand throws, which is usually enough damage with the high tier grenades to just wipe an encounter entirely on its own. It did take us a little while to get online, but at this point this character should be outputting damage significantly higher, AoE damage significantly higher than most AoE damage spec'd spellcasters, because you just do this all with attack actions and with bonus actions, so you can be hurling a million grenades in a turn, provided that you have the stockpile, so buying them from merchants, stealing them from merchants, and crafting them is of course incredibly important. With our remaining 2 levels, there's a couple different directions we could go. We could take a 4th rogue level and pick up Alert, for example, as well as maybe a cleric level to get us guidance and pass our medicine checks even more reliably if we don't have it from an ally. But since guidance is available from an item, I wouldn't worry too much about getting that. You can definitely use it for your medicine checks regardless. So let's just focus on maximizing the number of bombs we can throw in a turn and go ahead and level up. And we're going to put our last 2 points into yet a 4th class and take levels in Fighter. Fighter gets us a fighting style, so we can pick up defense fighting style or archery fighting style if you find you're using your hand crossbows regularly. At this point you probably are using your hand crossbows in at least some fights for supplementary damage after you've blown up a large group of enemies. You can finish off whatever remains. So I'm going to recommend archery fighting style, but defense is also good if you're finding you aren't using it. 2-weapon fighting can let you add your ability modifier to the offhand attacks, but mostly I think that archery is going to increase your damage output more just by hitting your attacks more reliably than 2-weapon fighting when it comes to hand crossbow use, but it will depend a little bit on how reliable you're finding your attacks are landing at this stage. And then of course with our last level, we're going to pick up Fighter level 2 to grab Action Surge. This lets us just throw even more bombs in a turn, so for fights that are particularly difficult, we can hurl as many as 6 grenades in a single turn. More, of course, if we have hasted ourselves, which is pretty easy to do because we can craft haste spore grenades or potions of speed in order to make our character throw even more often. This just lets us maximize our damage output as well as our control and utility output for our party. So I'm going to recommend Action Surge, but honestly, there's a lot of different directions you could go with the last 2 levels of this character. This one just seems like it increases the damage output the most, so it's what we're going to go with. Alright, that is the character, but let's talk about how we're actually going to gear this character and how we're actually going to use these grenades in order to win combats. For items for this character, of course, we are going to want a stockpile of potions, grenades, elixirs, arrows, and explosives as much as possible. I've included, for a complete list of this, of course, go see my consumables tier list to talk about which ones you want to bring, but in general, I recommend just bringing as many as possible, because the cool thing about this character is you'll have different options to use these bombs, depending on the different situations. For items that this character actually wants to use, I do recommend the Warped Headband of Intellect. Very few other characters will want this, and this will let you prepare 4 wizard spells, which is pretty good in and of itself, because it's just going to, or 5 wizard spells, which is pretty good in and of itself. It's just going to give you a little bit more utility for your party, so it's going to let you upgrade your ability to actually defend your party, as well as make sure that you can maintain Long Strider and cast Enhanced Leap on your party. And for other static items, this character is one of the best at using the buff on heal items in the entire game, because you can throw healing potions to allies, and then they will benefit from the Hellrider's Pride and the Whispering Promise buffs. If we throw a potion at an ally, they get those buffs, and you can throw them many times per turn. So you are actually even more reliable at applying those buffs than a Life Cleric, for example, because Life Clerics run out of the ability to do that all of the time, whereas this character can do it 4 times per turn, basically indefinitely, as long as you have potions, so you're very good at buffing your allies. For offensive capability, your default offensive choice is going to be the Alchemist's Fire, because this is one of the grenades that you can actually craft, so it's very easy to stockpile a ton of these. And Alchemist's Fire is great because you can use it to set off other explosives very easily. For example, we can throw a Smoke Powder Satchel, and that will land on the ground, and then you can set it off by throwing an Alchemist's Fire at it. No, Scratch! No, go away! Scratch brought it back, but we can throw an Alchemist's Fire at it to set off the Smoke Powder Satchel, provided Scratch isn't around to ruin our plans. Another cool trick that you have when you can throw multiple of these in a single round is to use a Spiked Bulb, which can apply bleeding. This is without a saving throw. Creatures hit by this have bleeding. And when a creature is bleeding, it has disadvantage on Constitution saving throws. You can combine that with a thrown poison. My favored poison here is Crawler Mucus, because it just has the most debilitating effect. And that will set up a cloud of poison, which enemies will have disadvantage on the saving throw against. Due to our very high move speed and ability to dash multiple times in a turn, you can also dash and then place down an explosive barrel or something like this box of fireworks and then dash away before hitting it with an Alchemist's Fire or shooting it with an arrow of fire to set those off from a safe distance. Other important items for this character: the Elixir of Hill Giant Strength means that your thrown weapon attacks will actually deal damage to enemies, which is pretty nice. You will hit them for bonus strength. You don't need strength to throw items, as you can see with 8 strength. We have the same throw distance on thrown items that any other character does, so you don't need to actually have strength just to throw them. But if you want to actually hit enemies with them for a little bit of extra bonus damage, the Elixir of Strength can be very helpful, and of course speed potions to make sure that we move faster and can do way more of this in a round are very helpful as well. The other key item for this character, or one that is extremely nice, is the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring, because while you are shapeshifted or disguised, remember we picked up Disguise Self, you get an extra d4 bonus to all ability checks. That means that combined with our plus 11 medicine, and guidance from an ally means we have a minimum of a 12, and Shapeshifter's Boon Ring means we have a minimum of a 13. If we roll a natural one, that's if we roll a natural one on our on our d20 and a natural 1 on both of our d4 bonuses, that then we will fail a check, but then we'll re-roll it. So only on a natural 2 on the d20 and double 1s on your d4s do you actually fail to make double potions if you have the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring. That makes it basically 100% reliable. You might fail to double craft like once over the course of the game because you're going to be crafting so many potions, but you're going to get a almost 100% success rate on double crafting potions when you have the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring, guidance from an ally, and medicine expertise, so you can get a lot of potions. You also want double hand crossbows because that will let you fire arrows, and the special arrows can be used to set off explosive barrels, or just apply bonus layering effects. You can throw a bottle of water, fire a lightning arrow at an enemy, and then you get the lightning damage from the water bottle, and so on. And also, don't forget that you're an excellent support character, so carry things like the Arrow of Salving in order to have panic buttons, because one of the great things about this character is you've got all the potions and elixirs at your disposal, so you are very good at getting your party out of bad situations, as well as doing decent damage, provided that you have bombs. It is true that the most powerful bombs in the game aren't craftable, so there will be some fights where you won't be able to unleash your full arsenal in order to make it through the game with enough items to succeed, but for the most part you can buy these from merchants or find enough in the world that for most fights you will have very good options for offensive and defensive weaponry. Alright, my friends, hope you've enjoyed this look at the Alchemical Grenadier. It's an interesting take, I think, on Baldur's Gate. Just plays out very differently than any other character, and let me know if you give it a try and enjoy this playstyle. Then hopefully that will be fun for all of you. Alright, folks, hope you enjoyed the video, and of course, if you have, then feel free to leave a comment and like the video. Both of those things help me out with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do so, and you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 builds and other strategy game content. Cheers, folks. I'll catch you next time.